What if I told you that the blueprint for female behavior in our collapsing society was crafted a century ago amid the smoky cabarets and decaying banks of the Weimar Republic? This isn't a history lesson. It's a diagnostic tool. In the next few minutes, you'll see a mirror held up to our own era, a reflection so accurate and disturbing that it will forever alter your perspective on the world around you. By understanding this blueprint, you will acquire the one thing every man in a declining age desperately needs: the power of foresight. This is the ability to perceive approaching storms not as chaos, but as a predictable chain of events, and the clarity to navigate them without being overwhelmed. If you're committed to genuine personal growth, seeking the raw, unvarnished truth rather than comforting lies, then my ebook, The Black Book of Human Nature, offers real value. It's a practical manual that uncovers the suppressed truths of human behavior, providing the insights necessary to understand and master yourself in turbulent times, giving you the tools to truly understand yourself and the world around you. The link is in the pinned comment. Let us take you to Berlin, 1923. But forget the grainy black and white footage you've seen before. This is different. You need to feel it. Imagine you're a young man. Let's call him Klaus. You fought in the Great War and returned home to a hero's welcome that lasted about a week. Now, you're an accountant, someone who deals with numbers, order, and logic. This morning, you received your monthly salary, a small but steady reminder of your place in this changing world. It was 5 billion marks, a staggering amount. Your wife, Greta, was overjoyed. You wisely decided to buy groceries for the week right away. You headed to the bakery. The loaf of bread that cost 1 billion marks when you saw it an hour ago now costs 3 billion. Your entire salary, trembling in your hand, is suddenly worthless. The numbers on the page, the logic that once structured your life, have been obliterated. This is hyperinflation. This is the moment the ground shifts beneath you, and this marks the exact point where the Weimar blueprint starts to take shape. The initial phase is what we call the Great Deregulation, when the real worth of a man's labor, his money, becomes meaningless. The entire structure of his value disintegrates. A man is no longer a provider. He becomes a relic. In this void, a new set of rules arises, driven not by duty or tradition, but by a desperate, survivalist instinct. This shift was documented in a chilling study by economist J.M. Keynes, present in Berlin at the time, was not merely analyzing economics, but also examining human behavior. He observed the emergence of what he called the velocity of life. People, especially women, realized that hesitation could mean death. The traditional idea of a lasting pair bond and saving for the future became not only impractical, but potentially fatal. Why marry the steady, reliable clerk when his savings might buy nothing tomorrow? The value of male qualities suddenly shifted from stability to immediate usefulness overnight. This gave rise to the legendary figure of the Weimar era, the Nutzfreund, or benefit friend. He wasn't a husband, nor even a long-term boyfriend. He was the man who could provide immediate relief, the army officer who could get you coal, the black marketeer with a tin of ham, the foreigner with hard currency. Women, conditioned for millennia to seek security, now found themselves biologically driven to do the opposite, hypergamous velocity. They had to trade up and do so quickly, not for a better life in 10 years, but for the here and now. But only for tonight's meal. This isn't a moral failing. It's a Darwinian response to economic absurdity. Do you see the parallels? When a man's degree is devalued by a saturated market, when his salary is eroded by uncontrollable inflation, and when his traditional role is ridiculed by culture, he undergoes his own form of hyperinflation. His social currency begins to evaporate. Now, let's make this visceral. Consider Greta, Klaus's wife. For months, she watched Klaus become more sullen, more defeated. The figures in his ledger, once a source of pride, had become a target for ridicule. Then she encountered Franz. Franz was a speculator. He produced nothing, only bet on the collapse. He wore sharp suits and always carried American dollars. He could slip into the Tanzplatz, the dance palaces sprouting like poisonous mushrooms across Berlin. One evening, Greta tells Klaus she's visiting her sick sister, but she doesn't go. Instead, she goes with Franz to the Resi, a cavernous dance hall with tableside telephones, allowing patrons to call each other across the room. It was a meat market of astonishing efficiency. Beneath the dazzling lights, to the frantic, syncopated jazz, the chaos around her makes Greta feel alive. Franz buys her a cocktail that costs more than Klaus's previous yearly salary. He promises her silk stockings. In this moment, Klaus, the war hero, the man of reason and loyalty, is not merely forgotten. He has become an obstacle to survival. This is the emotional heart of the Great Deregulation, the deliberate devaluation of the traditional male, not due to personal failure, but because of a systemic collapse that turns his virtues into liabilities. The comfort of stability is replaced by the shock of obsolescence. This transition brings us to the second stage of the blueprint, the carnival masks. When reality becomes too unbearable, society doesn't just seek distraction, it seeks inversion. It dons a mask. The Weimar Republic gifted us the golden 20s, a time of fleeting glamour amid chaos. This was an era of unprecedented sexual liberation and artistic modernism. But it was not a true renaissance. It was a fever dream. The carnival before the plague. Cabarets, open bisexuality, androgynous fashions, and blatant rejection of bourgeois morality were not signs of vitality. They were symptoms of a culture in its death throes, desperately grasping for meaning as its foundations disintegrated. Historian Otto Friedrich, in his seminal work Before the Deluge, describes this not as joy, but as a collective nervous breakdown. The birth rate plummeted, abortions surged, and marriage became a fleeting agreement, easily dissolved. Why bring a child into a world with no future? Why commit to a man who cannot guarantee a tomorrow that may never arrive? This reflects the female survival instinct in a collapsing society, withdrawal from long-term investment. The energy once dedicated to building a family and a home is now channeled into chasing fleeting pleasures. The data from this period is stark, revealing a society in decline. In 1920, Berlin saw roughly 10 divorces per 100 marriages. By 1930, that figure had more than doubled. This trend reflected more than individual unhappiness. It signaled a broader breakdown of the traditional pair bond. A sociological study of working-class women in Berlin, conducted by Franziska Kramer, revealed a startling truth. Over 60% of women interviewed confessed to having a Nutzfreund, an affair, beside their main partner or husband. Their reasoning was not rooted in love or desire, but in Sicherheit, security. But it was a different, frightening kind of security. Not the safety of a home and family, but the assurance of the next meal, the next pair of shoes, the next fleeting moment of pleasure to drown out the crushing fear. This is the dependability you experience now. This isn't some distant past. It's a recurring pattern. When you observe the increase in situationships over marriages, the celebration of hot girl summers, and the decline of stable family structures, you are not witnessing genuine progress. You are seeing the carnival masks. The same psychological script plays out on a different stage. The music has changed, the technology has evolved, but the core human impulse remains the same. It's a frantic, hedonistic escape from a future that seems threatening. So where does this leave a man like Klaus, or a man like you? This is where the story shifts from mere diagnosis to a spark of hope. Because some men did not break. Some men recognized the carnival for what it truly was and refused to don the mask. They understood that in a world of frenzied femininity and inverted morals, the greatest act of rebellion was to stand firm in unshakable, unapologetic masculinity. Not the crude street fighter type, but the steady, stoic strength of an oak tree in a hurricane. They withdrew inward, dedicating themselves to building a fortress of the self. While the world danced on the brink of chaos, these men focused on training their bodies and studying philosophy, forging resilience and clarity amid the chaos. They focused on mastering practical skills that held value beyond the collapsing currency. These skills became real in a world that had embraced the fake. They discovered a new kind of joy, not from society's dying validation, but from the internal fulfillment of personal sovereignty. This is the path we will explore next. We have identified the problem, the great deregulation, and the carnival masks. Yet the most crucial aspect of the Weimar blueprint is not the collapse itself. It is the male response that ultimately decides whether a man is consumed by the fire or forged by it. But this inward turn carried a dark and unavoidable consequence. Men who rejected the mask quickly faced a new, terrifying force, one that the decaying society, in its desperation, would soon unleash upon them. Now, we reveal the third stage of the blueprint, the betrayal imperative, and expose the startling historical record that demonstrates how the state itself will weaponize female nature against the very men it can no longer dominate. The carnival was never meant to last. The music was always destined to cease. For the men who had chosen inner resilience, who had constructed a fortress of the self while the world continued to dance, there exists a powerful form of masculinity in those who refuse to break. They embody what the philosopher Ernst Jünger, a trench veteran, described as heroic realism, standing firm in the face of chaos. The unwavering acceptance of a world unraveling and the choice to become a disciplined, active force within that chaos rather than its helpless victim. Klaus ceases to chase victory in a rigged game. He completely abandons the carnival. Instead, he invests in what cannot be inflated, betrayed, or legislated away. His own competence, his physical strength, his philosophical resolve. He discovers a new kind of brotherhood, not with party members or speculators, but with the other men who have seen the truth and refuse to be deceived. This embodies the Fight Club Manifesto within our dark academia. It's the unspoken bond among men cast to the edges who realize that true freedom resides in those margins. Their joy isn't the frantic euphoria of the dance hall, but the deep, silent fulfillment of self-control. It's the pleasure of forging a capable body, sharpening the mind, and cultivating a resilient spirit. They draw inspiration from the Stoics, embracing their teachings of endurance, discipline, and inner strength. In the philosophers who championed inner virtue as the sole true good, they see the fall of the external world not as an end, but as a new beginning. The dying Weimar Republic, in its final moments, inadvertently set the stage for these men to become what Nietzsche called the Übermensch, not a superhuman, but a person who has transcended himself, forging his own values where societal ones have vanished. He is the ultimate rebel because he refuses to be shaped by a society that rejects him. He defines himself on his own terms. This is the core message of the Weimar blueprint. The pattern is familiar: deregulation, carnival, betrayal. Yet, the male response need not follow this path. Today, carnival masks are everywhere. The unending chase of pleasure, the reversal of old values, and the celebration of the fleeting and the artificial. The first signs of the betrayal imperative are evident in the social and political forces that aim to split men and women, turning them into enemies. This blueprint isn't a prophecy of inevitable doom for those who are prepared. Instead, it serves as a warning and a guide. It shows that the journey isn't about winning a rigged game, but about creating your own game on a bedrock of unwavering personal sovereignty. Society may crumble, but the individual man can be shaped and strengthened in the flames of that decay. The story of Weimar doesn't conclude with the carnival. It concludes with the men who, emerging from the ruins, became hardened and resolute, prepared to rebuild from the ashes on their own terms. They learned the most difficult and vital lesson. In society's final days, the only force stronger than the urge to betray is the unwavering will to stay true to oneself, authentically and sovereignly.